So it's my pleasure to introduce John Carroll, who is our new Marin County Superintendent of Schools. And he is our first new superintendent in a very long time. He was elected last year to replace Mary Jane Burke, a mentor and supporter who, as you all know, was served 7 terms in office. So John will be our new superintendent for quite a while. He comes to this position with deep experience in Marin County schools, beginning in preschool. He grew up in Marin County and attended Marin schools from preschool on up through Redwood High and 2 years at College of Marin. From COM, he went on to earn a bachelor's degree in speech and rhetoric at Cal Poly at St. Louis Obispo. And in addition, he holds 3 education credentials and a master's degree in educational leadership from Sonoma State University. John has served in public education for 35 years, working as a teacher or administrator at every grade level, from preschool through grade 12. Most recently, he served as superintendent of Lagunitas and Belima-Stinson school districts and is the longest serving district superintendent in Marin County. For the past several years, his professional development work has focused on improving students' educational experiences and outcomes, especially those from historically underserved communities. He advocates for equity-informed practices and data-informed assessments and intervention, especially in elementary math and reading, and the expansion and strengthening of early childhood preschool programs. He puts his students first in his professional life, considers their needs in every decision. He has a special place in his heart for students who struggle in school, face extra challenges, or have trouble fitting in. He has been married to Monique Paltrineri. I'm pronouncing it wrong. Paltrineri, an elementary school teacher for 23 years. They have 2 children, Owen, a senior at Archie Williams High School, and Casey, a sophomore studying nursing at Long Beach City College. So please join me in welcoming Superintendent John Carroll.
Thank you. I'm still, for some reason, I've done Zoom for a long time. I'm still not quite used to the sort of silence of Zoom, but thanks so much for inviting me to talk to you. I'll leave plenty of time if you have questions, but I thought I might start with making sure people have an understanding of what the Marin County Office of Education is and what it does. One of the things I've learned at my whole, just starting on month number 5 on the job, one thing I've learned is that a lot of people who I run into out in the world, even people I thought were kind of up on what the county office does, really don't know. So I think most people are aware that Marin County has 17 independent autonomous school districts, each of which has a board and a superintendent. And in some cases, the smaller ones, they might have a principal superintendent who's the same person. And they all all run themselves, govern themselves autonomously. So the boards are elected by the voters in those districts, and they, in general, are completely self-managing. One of the mistakes people make is they think that I'm the boss, or that the Marin County superintendent is the boss of all the other superintendents, and that's not true. What the county office does do, it's a state constitutionally mandated office. It provides, this is not very exciting, this part of it, secondary fiscal oversight for districts. So we have an entire, to my left, there's a whole wing of the building that basically scrutinizes the budgets for all 17 school districts to make sure that they're fiscally solvent. One thing that I'm making sure that we keep up on here is that fiscal solvency for Marin County. In the history of the county, there's never been a school district that has gone under, and that's not true in other counties. There are places where the state has to take over a school district because it didn't manage its finances well enough. Our schools have been really good about that, and a lot of that is our office very early seeing red flags about spending, or about potential shortfalls in income, and making sure that we help those districts, give them the support they need to make adjustments to make sure that they stay fiscally solvent. So that's a big piece of the work here. Not very thrilling, but very important. So that's sort of the backbone of the organization. We do a lot of other things. And I'll get to the things that I think are more exciting in a minute, but just so you all know, like the structure here, we provide special ed services, especially for smaller school districts generally can't afford to maintain a whole program when they only have a few students with a certain qualifying condition, like students who really need profound assistance with their learning because of a disability. So we run programs countywide that all 17 districts will participate in. I think we have 73 classrooms that are managed by the County Office of Ed. I've lost track of how many students, but I think it's around 1,000 who are they're enrolled in our 17 local school districts, but contracted out to us for usually extraordinary special education services. We provide training for special ed teachers and for other teachers as well. Countywide staff development. We run countywide and assist districts with running career technical education programs. We do credential monitoring, so make sure that all our teachers are licensed. We maintain the countywide substitute teacher list. A whole bunch of other, and there are things I'll forget because it is a fairly large organization. And there's a lot going on here. The thing that I think is most interesting, and I'd like to talk to you about as a politician, is basically tone setting. This office, I have really good access to all of our educational leaders, all of our school boards, and especially our superintendents, and to bring those hearts and minds together in what we think is best for students is a real, it's a privilege to be able to hold that position. It's not I can't mandate things, but I've found that so far I have a lot of, there's a lot of capacity in this office to bring people together around good ideas. And as a district superintendent, I realized under Mary Jane, I was definitely a part of that. And it's been really interesting and a big learning curve, a very powerful feeling to start to work on kind of big topics to bring people together around. So that's kind of the most interesting stuff I'd like to talk about today. Good to go. Any questions so far about the mechanics or the governance of the Marin County Office of Ed? I'll pull out my whiteboard and I'll talk more. Okay. So yeah, when I was elected, hopefully you can see this. Okay, I'm pretty low tech. Is that visible? I can't tell if you can see that or not, but you probably don't even have to that much.
We can see it.
Yeah, you can see it. Okay. Yeah, one of I'd say the troubling problem in Marin County education is there is a persistent, and for those of us who've lived in Marin County for a long time, there's a persistent gap in school success between white kids and non-white kids. Basically Black and brown kids, to be more specific. Over decades, we've seen a real problem with that, and it hasn't gone away. There have been some sort of improvements along the margins in some ways of measuring that, but we still have a real persistent problem with it. So the whole reason I ran for this office, and what I'm hoping to do in the next over the next 4 years and maybe longer if it goes on longer than that, is keep us focused on equity. And people talk about equity all the time. We hear that term. What I'm trying to do, and what I've done here in this building and with our superintendents, is try to define equity in terms of education narrowly, so we know what the work is. We've done great work over the last 10 or so years, maybe more, like 20 years, over around educating people about racial equity in Marin County schools. There have been great speakers, courses. Many of us have been through, hours of training, lots of good books. I think it's time now to take more action. So there's been some action around trying to increase equity in Marin County schools, but I think we can make some big strides. At least that's my hope. That's the theory I'm operating with. So when we see equity, that's the whole picture. That's why I'm here. the way I'm defining that for our purposes is success in school no longer predictable by race. And that's a big ask. Right now, I use this example, my own kid's school. Both my kids are adopted. One of them is Latino, and he and I've had this conversation a lot, but he's my great political advisor and my good check, and he's 18 years old, goes to Archie Williams. But one thing we know, like when he was a freshman and we talked about this, he said, if you line up the whole freshman class, you can predict student success based on race. If you line up the whole class, you'd make a safe bet just by going by race is how kids are going to turn out at the end, given a variety of measures, college acceptance, grade point average, test scores, whatever it might be. And you can't, back then, you couldn't deny that. That was true year after year. That's the problem we were seeing. So we're defining it as success in school, no longer predictable by race in Marin County. That's a huge ask, but I think that's something that's definitely worth putting the time in on and staying focused on. A lot of work, as I mentioned earlier, that the county office does in a lot of areas. But what I'm looking at here is what I'm talking about is 3 leverage points, things that research tells us are likely to have a positive effect on student outcomes for all students. But and in theory, if this works, we will see some progress in terms of creating equity in the way that I've defined it here. So 3 big things. And then we'll talk about cooperative motivational climate as well. That's something that's like kind of a binding element to all of this. But anyway, ECE, early childhood education over there. I feel kind of funny with my low-tech pen board. I probably should have had a PowerPoint or something, but I always use a pen board to help kind of coalesce my thoughts. But early childhood education, the research has shown conclusively that if students have high quality preschool, the outcomes for those students in life, in school, is going to be better. In Marin County, not every single student has access to high quality preschool. We're getting there. Progress is being made. We now have universal transitional kindergarten, which will be helpful. A rocky start to that. But one of the things that we're going to be focusing on is that all students have access to high quality preschool. Gathering data at the moment to see post-pandemic how much of a lift that's going to be, and then using grant money, working with our public school partners, private school partners, and any like-minded people to make sure that we have all of our youngest kids enrolled in high-quality preschool programs. So number 1. Number 2, reading. There has been a problem nationwide with high-quality reading instruction, and it's. I'd like to recommend a podcast to you if you're a podcast listener. There's a podcast called Sold a Story, like sold, like you bought something, sold a story, which I think it's a little bit, it kind of listens like a true crime podcast. It's sort of like maybe a little over dramatized, but it explains how reading instruction, literacy instruction in the US and obviously California, Marin County, part of the US, we dropped the ball on reading instruction about 20 years ago, or at least we stopped doing some really important things really around the idea of word decoding, phonics, if you want to use a fancier word, orthographic mapping. Basically, in primary instruction, when we're teaching children how to read, and I'm talking about kindergarten, first, second grade, with the goal of getting all kids up to a grade level by third grade, using in primary instruction, teaching kids how to sound out words, which is something we sort of stopped doing based on on a theory that really hasn't panned out. And we've seen a downturn in test scores nationwide because of that. And it's not everything's about test scores, but they can be helpful when we're looking at big picture. In Marin County, there's several districts that were not implementing science-based reading. So this year we have already done a lot of work putting together a consortium of reading specialists and teachers. I believe we have representatives from all 17 districts now who are going to be participating in a summer series. I don't have my mind completely around exactly what that's going to look like, but there's going to be summer training and work to get people to bring back some of the essential elements of reading instruction that we've dropped over the last 20 years. We know that if we can have students at grade level reading by grade 3, their odds of success in school are going to be much higher than if we don't. And there has been a noticeable gap in achievement with students of color and white students in Marin County over time with that key metric. So making sure that we're providing higher quality reading instruction is going to be critical. The last thing, so science-based instruction, including decoding. I call it decoding. Some people call it phonics. There are other, and it's not just phonics, but basically teaching kids like here's how you address a word when you don't know how to pronounce it. We skipped that for too long. So I want to see that all over Marin County, and I think we're making some progress in that direction. There's some grant funding around it, and that's going to be very helpful. We know that when kids are struggling with reading, they're not fitting in school, and all the other parts of the curriculum are much harder to access. And this seems like common sense if they don't know how to read. So getting them all up to speed on reading is going to be important, and doing it the right way, making sure that we're teaching reading based on the research. Lastly, it says school to career, but it's more than that. It's, to me, this last piece is making sure that school is relevant from the student's perspective. Most students I've spoken to, in fact, most people I've spoken to, have had a moment in their formal education where they wondered, sometimes aloud, sometimes even in my classroom when I was teaching, when are we ever going to use this? And when we have students wondering when they're ever going to use something, we have students who are not as engaged as we would like them to be. So one of the things that we are working very hard on at the county office and developing a coalition of all of our partners to achieve is I would love to hear every 5th grader and older identify a career path and be able to recognize not just what they want to do when they grow up and get out of school, but what the next step is after they've finished what they're doing now. And the idea there is relevance. So if we have students, especially students of color, who begin to see school as relevant or more relevant, I'm not saying school is irrelevant at the moment, but if we can pull kids in by letting them see, okay, I'm doing this for a reason, that is going to move us toward equity, the way we've defined it here. So the 3 bullet points I have for that, and I'll switch over here so you can see them, is for school to career. I'd like to see all students identify a career pathway by grade 5. That doesn't mean they have to achieve that career pathway. A lot of kids, in 5th grade, they think one thing, they learn something, and it turns out they're going to do something else. Most of us are in that position. But to have career-based experiences for them that early, and then as they get older, relevant learning activities, especially into middle school and high school, including internships, potentially apprenticeships, work experience, and then align as much as possible curriculum toward that. And that includes expanding partnerships and programs all across Marin County. That's not just like trade school stuff, but like making sure that whether it's college or not college, or keeping the doors to college open while exploring other careers, that we're moving in that direction. So every student feels like what they're doing makes sense to them rationally in terms of what comes next. One of the things we run into in Marin County, I think we're especially susceptible to this, is we have high school students, you see it in high school a lot, where kids are just in school meeting requirements and being compliant to check a box so they can get into a college, not really sure where they want to go or what they want to do. And that does not create engagement. Also, if that's the overall ethos of the program a student's in, and they're not part of the white, more privileged class, that's not a world they're going to feel comfortable in. And so it's easy to become disengaged. So we lose kids all over the place if we're not keeping school relevant. And so when I talk about school to career, it's about relevance really more than anything else, keeping school relevant. And again, we know that when we provide relevant coursework and a clear path to gainful living wage employment after high school, that we're going to keep kids engaged, and we're going to see, in theory, some closing of that achievement or opportunity gap. So those are the, I'm not going to call them priorities, because there are a lot of priorities that we have to, there's so many priorities that, keeping schools open and fiscally sound is important. Making sure teachers are well trained, making sure they all have appropriate credentials, all that is important. But these conversation pieces, and there's some money and some energy behind them, and keeping those front and center, we believe, is going to have a positive effect on equity. In other words, to repeat myself, that race no longer is a predictor of student success. So that's kind of big picture of what we think for the next 4 years in Marin. A lot of other stuff going on too. And you can, if you have questions, maybe some of you have seen the work we're doing to try to support early childhood by getting involved with the Fairfax San Anselmo Children's Center issue, or the expansion of school to career opportunities, the new Career Technical Center at Terra Linda High School, and a whole bunch of new programs. Work related, job pathway programs, a lot of that going on. So that's about it. Any questions, or either about the county office priorities or anything else? I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Well, I have lots of questions, so I'll start.
Water. I'm listening.
I get one. Okay, great.
I'm here.
I'm so excited about so much of what you talked about. I just want to say thank you for focusing on early childhood education. It's just, to me, so critical, and something we can't lose sight of the importance of it. We know from years and years and years, generations now of research, how critically important that is. And I know that it's not, except for the transitional kindergarten, which is a great step forward. There isn't right now in our county, or probably anywhere, opportunities for very young kids to be in public education. So could you just speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, Marin County has we have some real challenges with early childhood education. A lot of it, some of it's like the success we've had with private providers. They're really good. I mean, like, there are preschools out there that are fantastic, and people like them. And we run into with universal TK, transitional kindergarten, we've run into this problem where suddenly the schools, well, over 3 years, schools now take on 4-year-olds. And that has had a, what's the right word for it? That's made private preschool providers really nervous, because if we take their 4-year-olds, suddenly they're not able to stay in business, or their model has to change significantly. Not only that, but we're sometimes taking away 4-year-olds from people who know how to teach them best. And so what we've been working on, and this is more like at the state political level, what can we do to use public dollars to access that care? And that's there's a, not to get too into the weeds about it, but there's a rule. You can't, it's a gift of public funds, they call it. So if a private, I can't, as a school superintendent, I couldn't send kids to a private school, to a private preschool, and use public dollars to pay for it. I'm hoping that there's some flexibility coming up in that world. When I worked in Billina Stinson, the school opened up a public free preschool, and I mean, this is maybe an overly dramatic way of putting it, but it basically put 2 preschools out of business. And including people who were like really good at their jobs. And so, some of them came to work at the public preschool, and actually things improved for them financially because the school paid better. But there's a lot of complexity around that. The other thing is, and I'm not the expert on early childhood. I was a high school English teacher. That was my initial training in education. I was a preschool administrator, so I kind of know something about licensing, but one of the areas, the very youngest kids, like infant and toddler care, it's just very hard to find providers for that, especially in underserved communities. They come and go. It's just been a real challenge. What I'm hoping to see, and I'm optimistic about, is that at the state level, there has been more interest than I've seen in preschool than ever before. So the advent of universal transitional kindergarten, to me, that's a signal that there's more to come. I hope we're gonna see universal preschool down to age 3, maybe 2.5 over the next 10 years or so. But we need to come up with public dollars for that. But I think in my position and school leaders around the county, for us to stay focused on that and to advocate for it's really important. And in the education world, there's kind of there can be a divide. Like, people who are in the high school world don't often see how important that preschool focus is. To me, I would trade this. This probably sounds really radical. I would lop off senior year of high school and trade it for public funding for having 3-year-olds. I think that the evidence that creates better outcomes for all students is right there. I mean, when I have a high school senior and I see it, like, he's learned a lot. He could probably survive without a senior year and maybe do an internship or something, or and a lot of his friends are like that as well, or maybe focus late high school on the needs of particular kids who need to graduate. But there's this like leverage point at preschool that we should be way more attentive to. So that's not to bag on high school. I loved high school. I was a high school teacher. It was great. But if we're looking for closing an equity gap and success for all students, I think our money is better spent at the other end of the spectrum.
Thank you. Robin has a question.
Actually, it's Ella Clark who has a question.
Oh, I thought you had a question too, Robin. Okay, Ella.
Hi. Okay, so first of all, I want to say that, like, lopping off the senior thing, I'm so for that. I'm a high school senior at TAM, and I just
Well, you get senioritis too, right? Of course, you want to lop.
really bad senior. Like, it's a Monday, and I'm clearly not at school. But anyways,
Well, no, you should be doing this, right? Yeah.
well, yeah. So
Learning.
first of all, I want to say that's a really, really great idea, and looking forward to maybe seeing where that goes, if that happens at all. But I also want to say, like, your passion is really contagious, and honestly, I wish I had you as like an English teacher. You seem really excited to be here, so that's really cool. And I know in politics people get like, they end up like just running the treadmill. We seem really excited. Anyways, okay, questions. So I take a lot of like AP and honors courses, and I want to say like 2% of students in AP and honors courses are students of color. And like at TAM specifically, I don't know if that number spreads out to all the schools in Marin, but I suspect it does. And I was just wondering what your office is doing to kind of address that, because like, I mean, it starts pretty early. Like, I remember in middle school in like 7th grade, we were being put into like advanced math classes. So like, what is your office doing to address segregation in AP and honors courses?
Yeah, that's there's a lot to that question. And thanks very much for the props. It's always nice to have somebody in the room who's like, yeah. One of the just a brief comment about my enthusiasm is I've never set out to be a politician. Mary Jane Burke retired to my surprise, and I just it's the first office I've ever run for. I've been a school person my whole life, so hopefully I won't put my foot in my mouth too much and keep that passion going. But yeah, so the AP question, and I have a question for you. Does the TAM district still make you take a test to get into an AP class?
No, freshman year, I remember you had to take a test to get into honors math, but we actually don't offer honors math anymore.
Yeah. Good. That's such good news. That was for several years before being in this job, and huge credit to your superintendent, Tara Topier, who I actually hired Tara when I worked there years ago as a director. She had been an assistant principal. I hired her as assistant principal too. I think it was at Redwood. Anyway, she's on the right side of history on this. One of the issues we had was that those AP classes, I think they're segregated for 2 reasons. The old reason was people were sort of handpicked by AP teachers who wanted to have all their kids get high AP scores. So there was literally a test to get into the AP class. The research has shown that when you don't have a test to get in and anyone can take the AP class, the results for all students are better, especially for kids of color who might not have separate question in a lot of ways. So limiting that and having those teachers be able to sort of like cherry pick or have some had prerequisites, like you had to take this class or that class in order to get into the AP class. I think that really turns a lot of kids off, especially students of color. The other thing is cultural. Like I believe, I mean, I'm a white guy and I went to Redwood High School, but I believe the culture is like, oh, those classes are for white kids, to put it kind of bluntly. And I think what we need to do is like do a lot more outreach, make sure that we remove barriers like testing or teacher recommendation or prerequisites. And then the more kids who are successful in those classes, maybe they don't even take the AP test. I know my son, I'm like trying to get him to take an AP test right now, and he doesn't want to do it because he's sick of it. But I'm like, take the AP test because you've done it. The more we can have success with kids of color who are taking that, then the more the word will get out that those classes are for everybody. And in other parts of like if you go to the East Bay, you'll see they're way more diverse in their AP offerings. And then I'll do a special nail in the coffin for honors geometry. Did you take honors geometry? Yeah, that should have been called honors for white girls, right? Yeah, it was like the exact same curriculum as regular geometry. You had to take a test to get in. The test probably wasn't advertised. It wasn't translated in Spanish. Probably happened on a weekend. No transportation to get there. And then, surprise, surprise, the class is completely segregated. So that class in particular has been a burr under my saddle. Wow, there's a cowboy reference. Who same thing. I've been pushing to get rid of that class for a long time, and I'm glad it's happening. What that means is that students who are taking geometry, which incidentally I think should be taken a lot later in life, in general, that class has to be brought up to a level where teachers have high expectations for every single student, and so that every class has to be seen as like an honors class, so to speak, and meet every student where they are. Did I have a note about that? Yeah. So hopefully that was enough said about that, but thanks for bringing it up. It's an area that I've had quite a lot of experience in and worked on, both as a parent and as an administrator. Oh, I'll just give you one more, throw one more insult at honors geometry. So I have two kids, they're both adopted. My daughter looks like me. Okay, she's 21 now. White girl, looks like her dad. My son is Latino, he's Mexican. She was given an invite to that honors test. My daughter was, and my son didn't get invited. He had a better math grade than she does. He's a way better math student than she is. And like, what happened there? So I was like, it kind of hits me in the heart a little bit. And I'm glad to hear that I know Tara has been working for a long time on getting that class to go away, but that means all those kids now get the experience of being in a more diverse group of kids. So yay.
I agree. For context, honors geometry versus regular geometry was a freshman, like a 9th grade class option. So you're setting students off on the wrong foot, and then you aren't able to like go through. But those are for the people who don't attend TAM. Okay, and then my other question, which is my last one. So you talked a lot about like making sure that we're making the right decisions for students, making sure that students feel like curriculum is relevant, that kind of thing. And nobody knows what's best for students like students do. So how are you including students in your decision-making process?
In this office, I have to be candid that I don't have a student body at the county level. So what I do have is I think the best way to get student voice in terms of this is to look back on my experience. And I got to say, talking to my young kid, I mean, he has probably an outsized voice of all the students in the TAM district. His voice is the loudest because I have dinner with him every night, or almost every night. There's that, but then we have this career technical office, so the CTE office. And that is where we have interface. We have career counselors for students who are in our regional occupation program, who we hire. They work for my office, and they have direct contact with students all the time. And that, I think, is when we, especially around that at the older grade levels, when we're talking about getting closer from school to career, they have a very strong voice, because they're the ones who are going to be taking these classes. And if we don't offer the ones that are going to be appealing, it's not going to work. And so in a lot of ways, they speak with their feet. If we offer an ROP program that doesn't work for kids, they're not going to take it. When we offer one that does, it gets filled up so quickly that there's a waiting list. And that's like, I'm really happy about that, because we have, unfortunately, kind of victim of our own success. There are certain classes that are, they're really hard to get into because there aren't enough of them. So we have to add them. Like the one I'm thinking is auto technology. We're open to kids all over Marin. I believe there's a waiting list to get in. And, unfortunately, I think if you're a junior and you want to get in, you might not even get in by the time you graduate. Culture Man is a great program too. And it's not just like auto shop, like, the old PE teacher showing you how an engine works. It's like, this is heading toward living wage jobs. And the same thing's happening with like trades. So the trades center, CTE center is going to be opening up at Terra Linda High School with the help of huge philanthropic support, as well as grant money. And then thanks to Santa Fe City Schools for contributing the site and helping us with staffing. But that'll be, heading toward jobs that will pay a living wage that may or may not include college. The idea is to keep those careers open. So if you have an interest in being an HVAC contractor, that might take college. Yeah, that maybe it won't, maybe it will, but like keeping kids on that track. I think that's the way we hear from students, probably at the best level. Yeah, but I think we could. And then secondarily, our superintendents, they have an obligation through the local control funding formula plan, their LCAP report, to listen to their communities, which should include students. That's called out in the report. I don't think it works perfectly all the time, but it is one other method. So I think that's kind of where we are with student voice right now. But yeah, super important.
So if
Could I make a question? Could I have a question? I don't see my little yellow hand to raise.
go right ahead, Joan.
Okay. I'm really interested in your comment of relevance and school to career kind of thing. And Saturday night, I was at the 10,000 Degrees annual fundraiser. And again, so impressed with the work that they're doing. And I'm wondering if at the superintendent level, you're in contact with them, or if that's at the school level. And I just appreciate your comments about that program.
Yeah, so we have a relationship with 10,000 Degrees. I believe 10,000 Degrees is also part of the Marin Promise partnership, and I think that's where we have our formal connection with them. One of their people is in the leadership team for that group, and that Marin Promise is a nonprofit that brings together a lot of public, but also some private partners working on equity. And so 10,000 Degrees has been a really great partner with them. And you can see like some of the benchmarks that Marin Promise and 10,000 Degrees uses is like they're right there. There are a few extra that aren't there, but they're very focused on early childhood. And they probably, I wasn't able to attend that event. I was at a different one.
Yeah, we have a lot.
Yeah, third grade reading is one of their benchmark priorities, and then school to career as well. They have other ones too, but we're very aligned, and we have a really solid partnership with 10,000 Degrees.
Can I just comment, the school to career, you said you thought relevance was really a better name. I have a couple of brilliant, wonderful granddaughters, and one of them has no idea what she wants to do. And the intellectual, geeky, studious one has changed her career. She's 16, has changed her career goal 3 times in the last 3 years. And I'm thinking about the kids in the underserved population. And if there are people in school, in the local schools, who are helping to expose them to options. And because I think, particularly in families where, you know, they might be the first in the family to go to college or whatever, that there are things on the plate that they haven't even considered. And what is the county office doing, and what are individual districts doing on that?
Yeah, so that's exactly what we're talking about. It's I mean, I have to take into account all students, but because we're so focused on closing the equity gap, I'm particularly interested in making sure our minority students are having as much exposure to those relevant pathways as everybody else. And you know, and that doesn't mean that you can't have a you know, I mean, the geeky college route where you don't know what you're doing, that should be viable for everybody if that's what you want. But I also think we do a disservice to those kids who have the privilege of being on that. My son's a great example. I keep talking about him too much, but he doesn't know what he wants to do. He has a 4.2 GPA. He's the captain of the soccer team, and he's going to Lewis and Clark. So, you know, we're planning on spending a lot of money on a kid who doesn't know what he's going to do. He'll be fine. I have no worries about him. He's a very self-starter, great guy. My daughter, on the other hand, not very academic. She's in her second year, starting to be a nurse. She'll be out. She's found an accelerated course, and we're thinking in 2 years she'll be making more money than my wife, teacher, being a nurse. And like her pathway is just really different. But like making sure that's why I talk about like. We need to check in with students and make sure they see a pathway. And I think we need to do that a lot earlier. And the way they find a pathway is by providing like kind of tastes of what a certain type of work might be like. I'm going to talk about my son one more time. He's like, he lets me talk about him. It's okay. Like I said, I'd never use him as a political tool. And he goes, oh no, you should. That's what politicians do. He's very sort of mechanically oriented. And I remember he gets into these YouTube videos and he was like, I want to be a welder. And I'm like, yeah, I wish you'd be a welder. You know, that'd be awesome. And he's like, yeah, but I got to go to college. I'm like, well, don't give up on the welding dream just because you think you have to go to college. Or maybe you can be a college educated welder. I mean, that you probably have to be. Welders make about what doctors make their first year. Plus you don't have to spend all that time in medical school. Or depends on the kind of doctor, I guess. But like, you know, they're like someone like my son who's on that sort of geeky college track, the world might miss out on the world's greatest welder because he wasn't steered or given a taste of what that might be like. So I think we lose some of those kids, and I was one of them. I grew up in Marin County. And I went to Redwood High School, and I remember I had a kind of a career path in mind. I did, but it was kind of vague. But I thought college, you got to go to college. That's more important than the career path. But like making sure that we're always giving kids those opportunities, and some of those used to be provided by like Explorer Scouting or 4-H, that kind of thing. And there's some of that still goes on, like our Future Farmers out in West Marin. There's still, I mean, there's small but mighty sort of careers in ag, which aren't not just being a farmer, but like those sorts of careers, but like taking advantage of all the people around us. There's one of our philanthropic partners, Charlie Goodman, who he's pretty much single-handedly started the I forget what they call it, the old car restoration class, where they work on old cars, and it's really popular. And that's just like one guy who has this passion, who's opened up this door for kids who he doesn't even know, who are showing up and learning that. And that is going to expose them to potentially a career there, or to other people who have different things to offer in the adult world. But I think we just have to make sure that make it a requirement for high school students to have had, well, maybe even earlier than high school, to have had some sort of exposure internship, something like that. And
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll give one more shout out to my favorite, in the community where I live, the San Geronimo Valley Community Center. They, as a partner with the Lagunitas School District, they started organizing internships using their own staff and their own dollars, where every student in the middle school there had at least one opportunity to do a job shadow internship for either a business or a nonprofit. And both my kids had like 2 or 3, like, you know, my son worked for a tea importer for a few days a week one summer. My daughter worked at Marin General as a volunteer. You know, all kinds of stuff like that's available, but we have to be very open to looking around us and seeing the talent that we have right in front of us.
Don't forget the County of Marin intern program.
Oh, right. I was trying to get she's coming back for the summer. She has a break. I was like, you got to do this. As long as you're under 22, and she's like 21, but she doesn't want to. So anyway, but yeah, it's out there. And that's, you know, a paid internship, full-time work for a limited period of time that's going to expose you. That's a perfect example of the kind of thing that we need to do more of. Yeah, and we're doing a lot of it. I mean, there's a lot to be happy about. I think our regional occupation program is like really going places.
Okay, other questions? You can just put a question mark in the chat, or you can put your little hand up, or just say, I have a question. Okay, well, while we're waiting for others, I have another question. And that has to do with College of Marin is doing a whole lot of career education. And you guys are doing technical education at the high school level. Are you coordinating? How are you working together on any of these programs?
Yes, absolutely. I don't work in any other counties, but I for some reason I feel like Marin County has the best partnership with its community college. We basically have one community college in the county, but we have a close partnership, and I want to express some huge gratitude to the leadership of David Wayne Kuhn, the college president, who has invited school leaders to the College of Marin, going back, I think, probably like year 15 of like envisioning what education should look like pre-K through college, and getting us all together to talk about career pathways. So we actually work very closely with them. A couple areas that I'll highlight is we're involved in this project right now, which is very exciting, targeted to students of color, where it's not a hope, it's going to happen. An education career pathway. So if somebody has an interest in being a teacher when they're in high school, they can identify that. And what we're planning on doing is, if you entered this career pathway, you'd be at College of Marin for 2 years, getting your general education work done, leaning toward a career in education. Then after that, you'd be guaranteed acceptance at Sonoma State into to finish your degree and get your teaching credential, either at a deep discount or free if possible. And all along the county office would be coordinating employment opportunities. So when you're doing that work as a college student, you'd be gaining credit and experience and actual paycheck by working as a classified employee in one of our schools. I think there's probably more to it as well. What I would like to add, and this is just me alone, so this is not a promise, and no one else has said, oh yeah, let's do that. We're going to be coming online in 2 years. We're going to have below market rate teacher housing available. It's going to be countywide, 135 units, 75 which are set aside for school employees. And if we could include that as part of that career pathway, it would do 2 things. It would help us get more teachers, which is something we desperately need. It would make an education pathway much more affordable, and it would guarantee employment for people. So that would be, it would also bring more people of color into our teaching ranks, which is something that is really important for us in order to help with the equity issue we have. So that's a really exciting thing that we're working on. Great partnership with Sonoma State. We've had like 3 big summit meetings about that with all kinds of partners. And I think that's going to be happening in short order. But huge thanks to the College of Marin for, I think, I'm not sure they were the ones who like started the idea or where it came from. I was working on it. I was on that committee before I had this job, but very exciting. So there's that. College of Marin also, they do a lot of their own like career path stuff too. We're there to support as needed. We have, I just toured their early childhood center in Larkspur, and that's kind of a budding partnership with how we might help. And I haven't, there hasn't been any commitments of any like personnel, but how we can work together to make sure that we're maximizing early childhood education, training for early childhood teachers. But yeah, College of Marin, really great relationship.
Yeah, it's a real treasure, isn't it?
Yeah, and I'm the poster child for College of Marin. I had in my family, my dad was a school vice principal, and my mom was a substitute teacher. We had 4 kids. All 4 of us, they had 4 kids. I'm one of them. All 4 of us went to College of Marin for 2 years at bargain basement prices, had a great experience, transferred to 4-year schools, graduated in 4 years debt free. So that's going back into the log cabin days, but that is still very possible. And I think I've gone to a lot of colleges since then and a lot of programs, and like the education I got there, the level of instruction was outstanding, and from what I hear, it still is.
Yeah. So, that's great. The questions?
I have a question. And getting back to equity and inclusion, ethnic studies, I know it's been mandated by the state, but the timing of it seems way off into the future, and I'm curious what the schools are doing now.
Yeah.
Currently.
I agree with you. The timing is, well, it is what it is. It's been mandated by law. It'll be a high school graduation requirement, I believe 2030. So every student in California will have had to have passed an ethnic studies course to graduate by 2030. A lot of schools in the state have implemented it earlier as an elective, and it's fairly popular. In Marin County, what we did, and I was on the edges of this, was before I was in this job, but I was very, very aware of it. A consortium was formed representing all the high schools in Marin County, and that team took the state framework that had been mandated and developed ethnic studies curricula that would be taken back to each of our high school districts and could be adjusted to make sure that it was meeting the needs that, or meeting the requirements that were going to be coming down the road in 2030, but also open to adjusting that curriculum for local needs. So one of the, or local wants, whatever, local values. One of the things that that committee did is they added a, which wasn't mandated by law, but they added a section on Holocaust studies and anti-Semitism, which hadn't been included in the state framework. Those classes, I believe they're all in place on our high school campuses. They're not a graduation requirement yet, and I don't believe that any of the districts have made them locally a graduation requirement. But that makes me want to look that up, and because a school board could mandate that locally. But they can't mandate it statewide. But I'll check on that and see if maybe someone has. But as far as I know right now, they're all in elective phase, but they all have really good teachers leading the work.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions? I'm going to unspotlight so we can all see each other. Anyone else have a question, a comment? Well, this has just been terrific.
Oh, can I say one more thing?
Of course you can.
In my chart back here, you see that okay?
Well, we can spotlight you again. We just have to. Dee Dee, you want to do that?
And my thesis advisor years ago kind of scolded me. It's a phrase that stuck with me, a very good learning moment. He said, to a man with a hammer, the whole world looks like a nail. Because I had this theory that I apply to everything, and I keep doing it. I'm going to keep doing it because I like it. One of the things that schools have gotten wrong historically, or maybe it was right back in the olden days, but that we've gotten wrong lately is we've made school competitive. Like one student's success is somewhat dependent on another student's lack of success. So for example, there can only be one valedictorian, or grading on a curve, things like that, where what creates a competitive motivational climate. School needs to change that. It's really important. So I kind of put that as the frosting on that lower cake. I'm bad mixing metaphors here, but if students see their success as completely independent of other students' failure, like it's not a race. We're not trying to there isn't this competition that if one student's learning something important, that doesn't hurt me and actually might even help me learn more by being around that student. That's something that we need to change. There's this culture of compliance that schools are based on that I think if we're going to keep up with the modern world, we really have to stop thinking that way and make it so that we focus on learning and supporting students in relevant learning. So that's kind of a critical thing that I want to, to me, that holds it all together. Like if you're having people compete with each other, you're not going to achieve equity in any meaningful way, I don't think. So, okay, that was my last plug for my hammer, cooperative motivational climate.